Tomoko's marriage to the blind young man, Mikio Kitada, surprised her relatives and friends. A capable, confident woman like her tends to make eccentric choices. The chemistry between them is different. Marriage isn't about aesthetics, after all. The opinions around them were mixed. Tomoko had graduated from a girls' high school 5 years ago. Having lost her parents early along with her brother Michitaro, she stayed home after graduation to care for him as the only woman in the house. Late last year, her brother married Suzuko, her junior from school, so now it seemed to be her turn to marry. Her sister-in-law's brother, Toyu, was a young doctor from a prestigious university. This young gentleman, now a relative, began courting Tomoko earnestly with a clear purpose, and to everyone's eyes, they seemed like a perfect match. Almost simultaneously, another proposal arrived via a matchmaker. Mikio, head of the Kitada family, fellow landowners. Being blind and uneducated, he was hardly considered a serious candidate by anyone. At first, Tomoko too had favorable feelings for the young doctor, Toyo. Cheerful, knowledgeable, and cultured, walking briskly through life, he seemed like a fun and brilliant partner to marry and live with. Yet his smooth, free-spirited soul didn't seem like one that urgently needed her specifically as a lifelong companion. It felt as though any beautiful, talented woman would do for him. His vigorous yet conventional soul was so strong that she feared he might crush her most cherished essence under the guise of happiness. In contrast, the blind young man Mikio wore his fragile, pure heart on his sleeve. Visiting the Kitada estate in Musashino, Tomoko saw Mikio almost for the first time, and instantly felt a pure indignation against his fate. Deeply moved by a profound tenderness from the very bottom of her soul, she felt an undeniable passion, unable to just leave him be. With him, I could fully exert my true strength as a woman, she even thought. Her blind husband was an only son, with parents already deceased. His vast inheritance and guardianship were managed by his widowed aunt. Oh, what a lovely day. Opening the shoji, Tomoko let out an unguarded, girlish voice for the first time in ages. But suddenly realizing herself, she looked back at her husband sitting behind her. The crisp morning sunlight of early summer shone from the garden onto the rising hill. Reflecting off the red pine trunks lined up among the green grass, the light brightened everything. The radiant glow reached even into the room where the two sat. The cicadas might start singing today, she said. Tomoko looked back at her husband again. He still said nothing, unable to associate good weather or imagine cicadas due to his blindness. Perhaps he thought his wife was just making merry all by herself. Mikio kept his head straight, but his face turned toward the hill bore a pale melancholy. Yet what delicate skin, unmarked by any worldly desires seeping from within to meet the harsh realities of life. It was the pure skin of her husband's face. Just as Tomoko had taught him, this is the easiest way to keep your posture. Mikio sat neatly in his rough silk kimono, hands respectfully resting together on his knees. On one of his obediently folded hands shone the slim wedding ring that Tomoko had slipped onto his finger from her suitcase in their honeymoon hotel room. Oh yes, I mentioned cicadas. I'll have a clay model made for you to feel. Hearing this, Mikio relaxed his eyebrows above his large dark glasses and replied, "Ah," with a voice still carrying a trace of childish innocence. However, it was no longer the clear expression of joy it used to be. The shapes of cicadas, snakes, frogs, monkeys, dogs, having these invisible creatures enlarged into clay or celluloid, for his touch was also Tomoko's own quiet delight. Married in February, Tomoko entered this life with heroic resolve and deep emotion. But in reality, the gap between his dark world and her world of light surfaced quickly. It eventually turned into a much more active burden for Tomoko herself. Her husband only had to rely on his wife's newly brought world, but the wife had to delve deep into the unknown, blind world of her husband. Perhaps due to his condition, Mikio was deeply introverted, hiding a remarkably pent-up passion within. Despite his intense thirst for knowledge and curiosity, Tomoko was shocked to find him left uneducated and utterly neglected. Before marrying, Tomoko visited his late father's country estate in Musashino a few times. There, she was warmly hosted by his middle-aged aunt, who served as his guardian. She had come to rather like the aunt's easygoing nature, but she was astounded and even slightly angered by her indifference toward his education. Once, Tomoko subtly reproached her. The aunt just laughed her usual tomboyish laugh. "But Tomo-san, Mikio has plenty of money. I don't want a blind scholar, just him to live long peacefully. Even if he knows nothing, he won't starve for 1,000 years." For their honeymoon, Mikio and Tomoko went to Atami. Mikio didn't even know white plums were white, or if blooming camellias were red or black. Tomoko was truly shocked. No one had ever stepped into this dark, untouched land. Perhaps this virgin land had quietly sealed its borders, remaining in complete darkness. Did marriage, a woman's love, and the joy of having a wife awaken his intellect all at once alongside his youthful passion? Moreover, Mikio's intellect and passion possessed a profound dignity and density. Tomoko's initial pity for his disability gradually turned into deep respect for him. She even began to find joy in the struggle of cultivating his dark world. The sea is blue, so is the sky. Plums are white and camellias are crimson. In Atami, Tomoko earnestly taught him these things first. Blue sea, blue sky, white plum, crimson camellia. Mikio began repeating them poetically. After returning to Musashino, heavy snow fell at the end of February. Gleaming snow means it's pure white. Snow is just white, like Atami's plums, but when it piles up, it shines pure white. The color white, things that are white are infinite. White roses, lilies, walls, swans. Crimson things. Red lilies, roses, coral, flames, mushrooms, ginger. Blue leaves, blue insects, yellow canola flowers, golden yellow roses. With such tender care and devotion, Mikio learned the colors Tomoko taught him at an astonishing speed through words. More than that, out of curiosity for the next unknown world, he kept begging for her teachings like a child wanting sweets. In this behavior, Tomoko also came to realize the relentless side of his character. The life force stored untamed for over 20 years of his life was now gushing wildly from his sightless, narrow outlet. She felt its power. At times, this poured out as the deep passion of a husband toward his wife, and at times as blind stubbornness, making her feel both reassured and darkly troubled. Until late spring drew to a close, their life was driven by curiosity and wonder. Even if initiated by Mikio's newfound feelings, it was a smooth progression of life for his wife, Tomoko, as well. The sweet, gentle, and sometimes fierce love of the young couple accompanied this journey. But lately, Tomoko had to recognize signs of a subtle shift stirring within her husband. One clear late spring afternoon, she dressed him in a newly tailored suit and stepped out into a sightseeing area of Musashino from the back hills. Having walked this path often, Mikio expertly traced the road with his cane, walking quite briskly, like a sighted gentleman stylishly handling a walking stick. Tall and slender, with jet-black slicked-back hair, Mikio was truly a handsome young man. Due to glaucoma, his eyes beneath the glasses looked vividly open at first glance. Few passers-by would ever guess he was blind. You know, everyone passing by looks back at you. Nay, it's because your suit looks so perfectly tailored on you. Mikio suddenly started tapping his cane more hastily, quickening his pace even further. Thinking of how moody he had become lately, Tomoko simply followed him in silence. Reaching a sunny slope, Mikio stopped. Tomoko, do I look that strange? What are you saying? You look exceptionally splendid. Then why do people stare? Oh, you misunderstood what I said. It wasn't sarcasm at all. They look back because you're truly dashing. I just wanted to brag about finding such good fabric and a tailor for you. Aye. Mikio hung his head. The metal tip of his cane dug deeply into the red soil. You've grown a bit cynical lately. Anyway, let's sit here. Let's talk while we rest. Tomoko brushed aside some faded silver grass and laid out a large white handkerchief. She then crouched down on the thick mugwort nearby. Good or bad, I can't even see my own appearance. Mikio stood still. Tomoko stretched up again and firmly took Mikio's hand. Here, touch it. You'll see how well-proportioned and fine you look. And mine too. I'm in a blue crepe dress and a yellow spring coat today. Blushing slightly, Mikio let Tomoko guide his hands, using all his sense of touch to feel their outlines. See? We'd be amazing models for a painting or sculpture. Yeah. As his hand slid from the soft worsted fabric to her skin, she held it tighter. She watched his face flush with brief relief and joy. But strangely, she felt a sad emptiness this time. I must not be dragged down by him. Tomoko braced herself inwardly. She resolved anew that she must forever remain the only guiding light in his dark world. I fully understand that the color of this violet is purple. But what I want to know is what purple actually looks like. And not just that. At first, I eagerly learned names of colors, white, crimson, blue, yellow. But in reality, I had no idea what they actually looked like. Mikio's initial tone sounded almost accusing towards her, but halfway through, he reconsidered and spoke with a lonely smile. That evening, she picked a bunch of violets blooming unusually late near the back gate. After dinner, Tomoko placed the small bunch onto her husband's warm palm. She never expected that purple would once again become a seed of his sorrow. Tomoko suddenly recalled a passage from André Gide's Pastoral Symphony. The blind girl Gertrude. But white? I don't know what white is like. The pastor replied, white is the highest pitch where all sounds peak. But just as Gertrude wasn't convinced, Tomoko found this completely unsatisfying too. Realizing she was in the exact same position, tears began to stream down her face. I will slowly help you understand more and more things soon. Feeling something akin to despair in her heart, a chill ran down her spine at her empty words, and she looked back at him. His body stiffened, quietly enduring sorrow, looking as if he were peering into a hollow world beneath the firelight. Gradually, Tomoko began to hold back from describing the sighted world to him. Far from his initial joy, he began to receive nothing but frustration and anguish from it. She even started to hesitate, having enlarged clay models of nature made. Eventually, he yearned to clearly see where the insects crawled, how the birds took flight. And worse, he was driven by a burning desire to visibly see his beloved Tomoko walking. Tomoko felt a crisis approaching. The more knowledge given without experience, the more his doubts and cynicism grew. The contradiction and friction between one in darkness and one in the light. And because the resilient thread of love tangled in this friction, it made things hopeless. She thought this must be exactly when lovers' suicides occur, deepening her chill. After desperate deliberation, the conclusion Tomoko finally reached was to withdraw the impossible attempt to drag him into the sighted world out of her pride, to return him to his blind world, live in the sighted world, and protect him. In short, to propel him into the tactile and auditory world suited for him, letting him find meaning and joy anew from there. To truly know why plum blossoms bloom on a plum tree is no easy task. Over a decade later, Tomoko, wife of Mikio who became a grandmaster of koto music, often felt ashamed of her past self for thinking a blind man mastering koto was a cliché, the well-trodden path everyone eventually takes. This very ordinary reality holds a truth far greater than any individual's design. This was the profound realization Tomoko had finally taken to heart.